Our next presenter is Chris Maynard, who says he has been following Jesus, committed to the local church, and studying the Bible for 49 years. He's worked with computer data for 43 years, with multinational data for 32, and with the global mission data for 19 years. During his time in mission, he's contributed in small ways to several different books, including Operation World and Mobilizing Movements. He's served the following Christian networks, speaking at conferences for each one: the Vision 5-9, the Community of Mission Information Workers, the Global Church Planting Network, Global Mobilization Network, and the Global Alliance for Church Multiplication, and the Movement for African Initiatives. He's currently an associate of One Challenge's global research team. He's a synergist for the Mission Commission of the World Evangelical Alliance. He's the leader of the Strategic Sending team and a member of his local church in Wales, where he lives. Chris, come now and share with us your vision for strategic sending.
Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Scott. I think you might have set me up here. You said research is a prophetic exercise. Not using that terminology, but I think those who listen carefully will see that this is a prophetic exercise, strategic sending, which is what I want to talk to you about today. It's a project to encourage the whole church, and we mean the whole church, to take the whole gospel to the whole world. And we mean the whole world. In April last year, 2 Lausanne issue networks, Ministry Collaboration and Research and Strategic Information, set up the strategic sending team, which I've had the great pleasure to lead. It was set up last year, but the origin of the idea goes back much further. I want to share the origin story with you today because I want to share how God brought this about, and I think you'll find it interesting. In fact, it was in the 1990s that I was reading the Gospels yet again and looking at the life of my Master Jesus, and I noticed how important it was to Jesus that he was sent. And I thought, I don't think I've ever been sent. I've always been open to being sent anywhere in the world. And yet I don't think God's ever sent me. So with my wife's permission, I started specifically praying that God would send us. But I didn't just pray. I also thought about it and did some simple research. I read my Operation World intensively, asking the question, what would make a suitable place for us to be sent? Clearly, one of the factors was that there would be unreached people there. I looked for phrases like, one of the least evangelized states of India. But at some point during these years of prayer and research, they were years, a sudden question came to mind. Where are all the non-Christians in the world? I opened Operation World to find the chart that would give me the answer, and I didn't find it. So I copied down every figure from the book of each country into my own spreadsheet and pressed a button to get a simple pie chart. I was shocked. I was stunned. I was amazed. I'd been a Christian for 20 years, interested in mission. Why had no one ever told me this? In my career, I was a global data architect. Why had I not discovered this for myself? This is the chart, roughly, that I saw. 1/4 of the non-Christians of the world were in China. another 1/4 were in India, and more than another quarter are in the rest of Asia. The continents are not equal, especially in the light of Christian mission. For months, I came back every day to this chart. I began to meditate on it as you would meditate on the Bible. I had it in a place where I could see it every day, and I kept thinking, what does it mean? After several months, I thought, well, I ought to ask the opposite question. Where are all the Christians in the world? It wasn't hard, so I quickly prepared another very simple pie chart. This one was less of a shock and more of a delight. It caused me to worship God. How beautiful is the Church of God. How wonderful that the bride of Christ is getting ready for her bridegroom. And one of the evidences for that is the progress from her days of exile in Europe to become a truly global body as she is today. And wait a minute, 2 of those nations are India and China. How wonderful too. God is in her citadels, as it says in Psalm 48. He has shown himself to be her fortress. So now I'm meditating on 2 charts and wondering about the relationship between them. I started doing little experiments in my mind and on paper. One was to consider the Christians of the USA, because that was the largest national number in the world, and the nation of China, where there were more non-Christians than in any other country. So what I thought, if we totally mobilize the USA to reach China, that seems like a good idea. So I imagined that by sacrificial giving and going, maybe we could mobilize 10% of the church in the USA and teach them Mandarin Chinese or some other dialect and Chinese culture and send them off to China. So ridiculous, I know, but bear with me. What would be the effect? What would have changed? Well, we'd have more Christians in China than we had before. But actually, we'd still have many more Chinese Christians in China than we would have USA Christians. I think you can see that 10% of the USA segment is going to be a tiny sliver compared with that China segment there. So that's not going to work. I started looking at more subtle ways at the global relationship between Christian and non-Christian. And I began to do lots of different iterations of a chart like this. So it's a simple scatter diagram where the fewer Christians you have as a percentage-wise in the country, the further up the chart you go. Let me just get a pointer here. Right. So up here, the workers are very few. And the further right you go, the more plentiful the harvest, which is why India and China are right off to the right here. I won't go into all the details of the chart, but you can see Afghanistan, Yemen, Morocco. If you've been around, you know these places have relatively very few Christians. And India and China, I've already shown you the chart where most of the non-Christians in the world are there. So I would think of this chart and think, well, what's the priority for the global church? And I might draw a line, and maybe I might draw a line down here, let's say, and say, well, obviously, it's a priority to go where the workers are few and where the harvest is plentiful and where there's some combination of the two, like Bangladesh and Turkey. And so these must be priority places for the church. But then I would start looking. I found I looking at the ones just underneath this line, like Algeria and Iran, and think, oh dear, surely we need to go there. So I drew a new line. So I'd come further back. Let's take a line through there and include Algeria and Iran. And then I think, well, no, Tunisia, Niger, Thailand, they all surely need some help. So the line would start moving further back. And sometimes it would be a bit more this way, and sometimes it would be a bit more that way. And every time my heart of compassion came to look at the ones underneath the line and say, well, what about Tajikistan? What about Mali? What about Saudi Arabia? Surely and I began to formulate this question, who is going to go to the second rank? If that's our priority up in this corner, who's going to go to the second rank? So all of a sudden, and it was very sudden, just as sudden as the question that popped into my mind, where are all the Christians? I had a plan. I knew what we could do as a data person. I knew that we could employ data to help. We could quantify the resources of the church and the needs of the world. We could draw affinities between different regions of the world. So instead of giving one global priority to the whole church throughout the whole world, we could find different priorities for the churches of the USA and the churches of China. Different priorities for the churches in Brazil from the churches in Nigeria. We don't need to be doing the same thing. In fact, it's a very bad idea in a polycentric world if everyone tries to do the same thing. So all these months, if not years, I'd been asking the wrong question. I'd said, what is the global priority of the church? And I realized there is none. Because in a polycentric world, we can't have one global priority. So now, within the strategic sending team, we've made a data model like this, based on the data that you see here. So a very limited set of data: evangelical Christians, population, physical distance between places, different languages they speak, whether they're in the same country, and whether the harvest is bigger and the workers are fewer. And I've got the wall of Jerusalem in the background because Nehemiah is a bit of an inspiration here. And what he did in chapter 3, especially, which is the really boring chapter with a list of people, is he didn't get everyone working on every part of the wall. He got the whole wall being worked on using the whole Jewish people. And we believe we can get the whole church bringing the whole gospel to the whole world. And our plan is to speak from global mission, somewhat in a prophetic word, to the local church to encourage them to engage in regional work. But that will be a limited regional work. It's not saying you've got to go into all the world. And what we've realized significantly recently is that this needs to be, we're not going to pass this message directly, needs to be communicated through regional mobilizers. So one of the things I'm looking to do is to connect with regional mobilizers to understand how they can make use of this. The message is to local church, but it is a tool in the hand of mobilizers. So, let's see. So here, I can't go into all the detail now. We've divided the world into 85 different regions, but this is aggregated back up to Lausanne regions. I just want to highlight the big things because these can be quite dramatic to people. So the biggest figure here is here, which indicates that we should be sending from East Asia to, East Asia. From East Asia to East Asia. 16%. That means 16% of the global church going to 16% of the world. That's a lot. Let me just take the next biggest here. EPSA is this strange Lausanne region that stands at the bottom here, English, Portuguese, and Spanish-speaking Africa. 11% of the global church addressing 11% of the population of the world by EPSA engaging with the nations of South Asia. And the third one, and a lot of the ones are sending to self. This is Africa to Africa, 10%. I haven't got time to go into all that, but for some regions, notice the most strategic thing is going to be to reach themselves, reach their own region. For others, they need to go some distance. And it was the same with Nehemiah. Famously, some of the groups worked adjacent to where they lived. Other groups, like the group from Jericho, didn't live near Jerusalem, but they were called to work on a bit of the wall that was the first bit they got to when they came from Jericho. But other groups, if you look into it, like the group from Mizpah, in order to work on the whole wall, they had to go around the other side. So we want to help sending become more strategic. As it says in the Lausanne Covenant, world evangelization requires the whole church to take the whole gospel to the whole world. The strategic sending team wants to encourage focused strategic sending to move towards that goal. And going back to something else Scott said, our job is just to deliver the message, which we're hoping to do sometime in July with a sort of beta test version. There won't be a big fanfare, but we're planning to test it out with some people who are mobilizers and see where we go from there. Particularly interested in connecting with African mobilizers, as you might expect from what I've said. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Chris. We do have a couple of minutes. If any have questions, well, the first question in is from John Mayer. Chris, will you talk about the local regional connections?
Local regional connections. I'm not sure what you want, John. Do you want to unmute yourself and
go ahead, John?
Tell us
that slide where you have the sending from one to the other and how they relate to each other.
Oh, right. Okay. That's why we'll be encouraging some churches to go in one direction and some in another direction. That's due to physical proximity. Are the regions close to each other? Well, overriding, it's resource and need. Overriding, as with Nehemiah, we have to match resource and need. Where's the church? Where is the world? And we match the two. But as we go, we're looking at how close are you physically, whether you share a common major language, such as English. Not everyone may speak English in your country, but if English is a key trade language, then that is what we call an affinity, and we're more likely to recommend that you go in that direction. and the other ones are more trivial. Those are the two most important ones, the physical proximity and the shared language.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question, and perhaps this will be the last. Chris, you know I love this line of thought, says Jason Mandrick. You mentioned early how important it was to you and to Jesus to be sent. It seems that where people feel sent to usually has little rhyme or reason regarding actual need or strategic deployment. How does your model address that?
Okay. By dropping in a little prophetic word, which may, sorry, Scott, I'm making great use of your, a little prophetic word, which over time may influence the way people feel called that they're sent. I think that's the simplest way to put it. We're also hoping to influence churches and church leaders specifically who have an influence on where people get sent. There you go.